Story for you guys. Tim Pool confirmed leftist. This is from ground.news, Blindspotter, and it says 53% of the news Timcast interacts with on Twitter leans left. Top 3 influencers are Vosh, Michael Malice, and Jack Posobiec.
Wow.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Indeed.
Now, to be fair, the reason why it says most of the news I interact with leans left is because it's the New York Times, it's CNN, it's Newsweek. These are mainstream news publications. They lean left. The media has a leftist bias or a liberal bias. Michael Malice is slightly leaning left with a big, right wing right there. Vosh is overwhelmingly left and Jack is overwhelmingly right. This right here is really fascinating. First of all, I'm obviously not a leftist, but I think it's fair to say that on policy issues and certain issues, I am center left, libertarian, a little, difference in opinion from Luke on some ways. But when you look at Vosh, his worldview is comprised almost exclusively of leftist media. Michael Malice's worldview is mixed between liberal and conservative media, and Jack Posobiec is a little bit of liberal media, but mostly conservative media. This makes total sense based on the way they interact with media, the things they believe, the things they say. Why does Vosh think that, the first time he came here, he said, Tim Pool, he told me to my face, you're far right. Because the only media he interacts with is left media, who make up, garbled nonsense about me. Now he says conservative. Why? Because he actually came here and interacted with me. And now, he comes here and we agreed on a bunch of stuff. In fact, when we had the Charlie Kirk and Vosh debate, I was actually a lot of the stuff he said, I was like, I agree with you. You're correct. That point is true. And these things are true. And then a lot of people who followed him were like, oh, I didn't realize, they're like based Tim and things like that. If these people just mixed up their news sources a little bit, got a healthier balance, everyone might actually calm down. The problem is New York Times, CNN, Newsweek, my top 3 sources, they lean left. So if Vosh is just watching MSNBC, CNN, reading The Nation and all that stuff, and it's overwhelmingly left media, then I don't know how you break someone out of that broken reality.
Can you put anyone's Twitter handle in there?
You want me to do you?
Yeah.
Luke, we are change?
Luke, we are change.
It's going to be like he's a crackpot conspiracy guy. Look at that,
What?
Luke.
What?
44% left?
44% left. Bro, it's because the New York Times,
You read
Zero
the other
hedge.
news?
Zero Hedge and
Hive.
Hive. But it's because the New York Times is a left-wing publication.
Yeah.
So when you Ground News is a good job of this.
Huh.
Look at that. Thomas Massey, Glenn Greenwald, and Cernovich are your sources. And
Nice.
Glenn Greenwald is very left when it comes to the media.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you've got Cernovich, who's very balanced.
Yeah.
Interestingly, look how small the centrist is in Cernovich. Massey's got a little bit bigger one.
Interesting.
Luke, you've got a 21% moderate. Let's see. Let's go back to mine, because what was the percentage of moderate for me? 23% center. But most of it leans left. Why? The mainstream press is a liberal media machine, and this proves it. Let's jump over to Vosh. Look at this. He only interacts with 64% left wing. The New York Times, the Daily Beast, and AJC. What percent? I can't even see the percent
tiny.
of right. Shuan Head, Ken Klippenstein, and Hassan the Sun, all overwhelmingly left personalities. So Vosh's worldview is inherently broken because he's not consuming media from other people. He's in an echo chamber where he hears what he wants to hear. I mean no disrespect. I respect that he was actually being fair to a certain degree when he was talking about the RA thing. He like he said, if it was any other mixed race person complaining about racism, you would be on their side. But because it's Tim Pool, you don't like him. He is correct about that. You know what I think? Vosh, I think, is a smart guy. I think if he actually started adding in some non-left-wing news, even like he needs to mix in a little bit of conservative sources. He'd be like, well, hold on. Wait, this right-wing source says X, but the New York Times says Y. Where's the break here? And I'll give you a really good example. The Washington Examiner reports that the January 6th committee admits to doctoring the message from Jim Jordan to Mark Meadows. That is a fact. What did the Independent report? Jim Jordan confirms he sent message to Mark Meadows. The objective truth is the message was from Jim Jordan and it was altered. Now, if you only read the left source, you probably don't know it was altered. Really good example when we had Hunter Avalone on the show. And he said Joe Biden didn't do anything wrong with the quid pro quo. And he didn't know anything about Viktor Shokin and Zlochevsky and anything that happened with Burisma. And I did. Because not only did I read the conservative outlets, the mainstream outlets, I literally read Ukrainian news sources on what was going on. So if you have people like Vosh who only consume echo chamber content, that's what you get. Shoe on Head, look at this. Even Shoe on Head is 76. She's worse than Vosh, but she does have 13%, conservative in there, and she just interacts for the most part with people who are on the left. This is really interesting. Let's take a look at a conservative personality, Jack Posobiec. He's overwhelmingly right wing, and he consumes media from people who are also overwhelmingly in the right wing sphere. I think it's fair to say you look at how people consume news and you can predict their viewpoints and how they view the world. I think everybody, even Jack, should be reading a lot more of mainstream news sources. Mm-hmm. Well, I say Jack should read more mainstream news sources because he's clearly getting more right-wing sources. And, Vosh should read more right-wing and independent sources because he's clearly getting nothing but mainstream sources.
You should treat it like crossing the street. You don't only look right when you're crossing the street, especially in New York City with the crazy drivers that they have in there. You look left and you look right before crossing the street. And I think, that's a perspective that's gone for a lot of people. A lot of the people don't want to face a different reality than the one that they're codified in, the one that they feel safe in. And a lot of people do feel safe by having their kind of political voices reinforced, their beliefs reinforced. And I'm a big fan of just waking them up, shocking them as much as you can, and having them wake up to the true reality of the world.
This is why I think right here we have Ben Shapiro. This is why I think Ben Shapiro is so smart, so quick, and why he's his opinions are crafted by facts. And he doesn't get everything right. I don't agree with all of his opinions. But you can see here from his Ground News Blindspotter, 38% of his news is left-wing, 18% is moderate, and 44% is right-wing. It makes sense. Ben's a conservative guy. He follows people who are consume middle of the road across the board. Look at this. Steve Miller, Red Steez, a healthy news diet in the middle. These are the people that I think, you are doing a good job. When Ben has a debate with someone like Malcolm Nance and he nails all of his facts and his opinions are crafted by those facts.
Well read.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
From good sourcing and mixing it up and trying to understand both sides.
I grew up with 10 channels. And my dad's a centrist, leans right, but he would always tell us you got to watch everything.
Mm-hmm.
And
I would always notice when he got into friendly debates at Thanksgiving or something, he would know the other person's argument if they happened to be on the other side better than they knew his argument. So he's arguing their point and his point, and they're hearing things from him that are completely from another world to them. So
it's even being able to be willing to have those conversations. A lot of people are afraid of having those conversations. They're prevented at having those conversations. So even though yesterday was kind of a crap show, the conversation at least happened.
I think
people
that's
were
good.
kind of forced to have it.
Yes.
And I think there's a layer of it, too, that we could still salvage from the craziness, some kind of understanding from where other people are coming from. And I think one of the biggest signs of intelligence is being able to have an open mind. If you're able to hear ideas that are critical of yours without having an emotional reaction, and then you could logically, critically think about them and assess the facts of the case. Very few people do that. They just want to be emotionally clickbaited into something that makes them feel nice and reinforces their side.
Let me tell you why Brian Stelter will never be on par with Ben Shapiro. And this is a good example. 90% of what he interacts with as a media correspondent for CNN is left-wing media. Oliver Darcy, who is a media correspondent for CNN, 85% left-wing content. These are the guys who are supposed to be covering the right. They don't even read it. Reliable sources. The media show on CNN is 99% left-wing media. Wow. They do not interact with anyone but themselves. These guys are sitting at the bottom of a well, talking to each other about, actually, you know what? They're the people sitting in the cave, the allegory of the cave, looking at the shadows, thinking they know the world, and they're not interacting with it at all.
Yep. So this is something that I mentioned to Olivia when I was driving her over, because I was like, I don't want to argue with someone who doesn't understand what we're talking about. I want someone who's well-read, well-informed, someone who can change my perspective because they know facts that I don't, like talking about redlining and blockbusting. That's stuff I want to know about because that changes my view on stuff like systemic racism. But it's very hard to find someone on the left. Maybe it's just because it's easier to only read left-wing sources, like what Brian Stelter apparently is doing. I cannot believe that these are the people that they choose to cover the media. I forget who it was who was advertising for a right-wing media reporter. And I was like, well, as far as I know, as far as these people are telling me, the right wing doesn't even exist. There is none.
Yeah, I think there's also a debate to be had with a lot of people on the left wanting to give handouts, wanting to help others so they don't have to work towards something. Because when you have an idea that contradicts your viewpoint, you have to work to combat it. And I think there's an aspect of people having the ability to be able to work. And I think maybe that's why a lot of right-wingers are for work, for having this kind of Protestant work ethic compared to people who want to be the mother in our kind of larger society and give people help and be their supportive role. And I think a healthy society has a mother figure and a father figure that has both kind of influence on people's lives so they get a fair perspective on it. Because if you go too far in either direction, you're going to be in an unhealthy direction, you're going to be unbalanced, and you're not going to be a person that's going to kind of fare well with the kind of rules and circumstances of our society.
So I want to